Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Tuesday, February 17, 2026. Here's what's ahead. A man with a shotgun arrested as he runs towards the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. We'll hear from the U.S. Capitol Police Chief. Tributes to the late Reverend Jesse Jackson, civil rights movement pioneer and presidential candidate who has died at the age of 84. We'll hear from his son, Jesse Jackson Jr., and a protégé, Reverend Al Sharpton, and talk with Washington Post chief political correspondent Karen Tumulty, who reported on Jesse Jackson's 1988 presidential run. Homeland Security Department shutdown is on day 4, with no signs it will come to an end soon. The White House and Congressional Democrats continue to trade offers on immigration enforcement reforms, but have not reached an agreement. Latest round of U.S. Iran talks over Iran's nuclear program conclude in Geneva. Both sides speak of progress and agreeing to guiding principles for an eventual deal. The Commodities Futures Trading Commission says the agency will fight state regulation of prediction markets. We'll hear from the CFTC chair and talk about the stakes with Axios business reporter Nathan Bomey. Plus, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton accuses the Trump administration of a cover-up when it comes to the files of the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, and politicians celebrate Marty Gras and the Lunar New Year. And we begin with the 18-year-old carrying a loaded shotgun running to the U.S. Capitol building, arrested by the Capitol Police. Police Chief Michael Sullivan held a news conference.
Today, just after noon, we had a white Mercedes SUV park in the 100 block of Maryland Avenue. And then we had a person exit that vehicle with a shotgun and begin running towards the Capitol. This individual was challenged by United States Capitol police officers and ordered to drop the weapon, which he did comply with. He laid down the weapon and then laid down on the ground and was taken into custody by our United States Capitol police officers. I want to commend the officers for the brave service that they provided here today. Who knows what could have happened if we wouldn't had officers here standing guard like they do every single day. I think it's important to note that just a few months ago, we had an active shooter exercise right here on the West Front, virtually in the same spot, and we do those active shooter exercises every single month, and that's why we do it. I think it's also important to note that this individual had a tactical vest on. He also had tactical gloves, and when we looked in the vehicle, he had a Kevlar helmet and a gas mask in the vehicle. He was also, like I mentioned earlier, the shotgun was loaded. He had additional rounds on his person.
U.S. Capitol Police Chief Michael Sullivan holding a news conference outside the U.S. Capitol building. Associated Press writing about this incident. Sullivan said the motive was under investigation, including whether members of Congress were the target. Congress is not in session. Sullivan said the department has video footage, but he asked the public for any footage they might have of the incident. And Sullivan said the young man was not known to authorities and described him as not being from the area. That was from AP. USA Today writing the Reverend Jesse Jackson, a towering civil rights icon who battled alongside Martin Luther King Jr., negotiated global hostage releases, and shamed corporations for their lack of corporate diversity and failure to support voting rights, has died. Jackson was a Presidential Medal of Freedom recipient, a Democratic presidential candidate, and one of the world's best-known black activists. He was 84 and had suffered from progressive supranuclear palsy, a rare disease that causes a decline similar to Parkinson's disease, but accelerated. Reporting from USA Today, one of Reverend Jesse Jackson's sons, Jesse Jackson Jr., a former member of Congress, Democrat from Illinois, spoke to CNN by phone.
I stayed on the couch last night next to my father in his bedroom, and about 12:35 this morning, I heard him take a deep sigh, even as he was connected to oxygen. My father expired this morning officially at 1:52 when the nurse came and declared him deceased. But Dad let the ghost go at about 12:35 this morning, between 12:35 and 12:37 Central Standard Time. And it was a powerful moment for me to recognize that for 84 years, this man had breath. He had life. He had spirit energy. And even today, when the President of the United States referred to him as a force of energy in nature, Make no mistake about it, Jesse Jackson was unique in American history, and I hope that his legacy lives on. A new generation of Americans who might draw from that energy, understand our Constitution, engage our system, and commit themselves and their lives to making a difference.
Jesse Jackson Jr. in a phone interview with CNN. President Donald Trump writing on Truth Social about the passing of Reverend Jesse Jackson. I knew him well long before becoming president. He was a good man with lots of personality, grit, and street smarts. He was very gregarious, someone who truly loved people. Despite the fact that I am falsely and consistently called a racist by the scoundrels and lunatics on the radical left, Democrats all, it was always my pleasure to help Jesse along the way. President Trump then gives some examples in both the private sector, giving office space to Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition, and in the public sphere, criminal justice reform and funding historically black colleges and universities. President Trump also has this line in his post: he had much to do with the election without acknowledgement or credit of Barack Hussein Obama, a man who Jesse could not stand. Former President Barack Obama writing on X, Michelle and I were deeply saddened to hear about the passing of a true giant, the Reverend Jesse Jackson. We will always be grateful for Jesse's lifetime of service and the friendship our families share. We stood on his shoulders. We send our deepest condolences to the Jackson family and everyone in Chicago and beyond who knew and loved him. That statement from former President Barack Obama. The Reverend Al Sharpton, the founder of the National Action Network, spoke at a news conference in New York City about Jesse Jackson's lasting impact on American politics.
Jesse Jackson changed American politics. Jesse Jackson changed the civil rights movement. He was a consequential and transformative figure. And he changed New York politics. Let me go in that order. One, it was when Dr. King died, was killed in '68, he was talking to Jesse Jackson and Ben Branch over the rail at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis. And Reverend Jackson was literally one of the two last people to speak to him. I always wondered how much trauma that must have been for him to witness Reverend King's assassination. He never would talk about it too much, but it drove him. He kept saying, we got to keep Dr. King's dream alive. He was 12 years younger than King, as I was 13 years younger than him, and he would always challenge me that your generation's got to do what John Lewis and all of us that were younger than Dr. King did. He kept the movement going by keeping the economic boycotts of Operation Breadbasket going, by dealing with diversity, by fighting for affirmative action. You must remember when the late 70s and 80s, when Reaganism rose and there was this backlash on civil rights, Jesse Jackson took the front with John Lewis and others to restore what Dr. King had done. We romanticized the 60s like they were never challenged. They were challenged. We had to renew the Voting Rights Act every 5 years. We had to deal with state laws. And it was Reverend Jackson that did that into our era of having to deal with racial profiling and driving while black and all. We learned all that from him. It was in 1984, when he ran for president, that he changed the rules that primaries were governed by, where in pre-Jackson, if you ran in New York, for example, and you got 104 delegates and your opponent got 100 delegates, your opponent got all 204 delegates. It was Jesse that made it be, no, you get your 100, they get 104. With him changing it to proportional delegate representation is how Barack Obama was made the nominee. Hillary Clinton won more big states, but he was able to accumulate more delegate votes. So he literally changed the party in '84. And then in '86, the midterm elections changed because he had registered so many new voters that had not been calculated before, that many of the states turned, and the U.S. Senate '86 became Democratic control and maintained a lot of the things that we would have lost under the Reagan era because Jesse Jackson registered those voters. In '88, he ran again, got 7 million votes, won the city of New York. It was his 88 race where he won the city, lost the state to the caucus, but he won the city of New York, which made us believe in 89 we could win. And we did by electing David Dinkins. David Dinkins was his coordinator for New York City in 88 and became the mayor in 89 off Jackson votes and the belief we could win it because Jesse Jackson, despite the controversies around him, won the city of New York in 88. So I'm not talking about somebody that just is some removed figure in history. He literally changed American politics, New York politics, and kept the civil rights movement going, and then raised some of us that have been in the forefront in the first part of the 21st century.
Reverend Al Sharpton, founder of the National Action Network, at a news conference today in New York City. He said he first met Jesse Jackson when he was 13 years old and remained close friends and professional allies throughout the decades. Al Sharpton reflected on the lessons he learned from Jesse Jackson starting at a young age.
He opened my eyes in two ways. He opened my eyes that we could make a difference, we could make change, that we could not be cynical. So by him running, as never had been an elected official, with most black elected officials at that time not with him in 84, when he ran and did that, I believed that we could make a difference, we could change laws, and which is why I went from just being bitter to trying to be better. And be able to help change the system by not just fighting the system, but fighting it inside and outside at the same time. What he did for me personally, I was born and raised in Brooklyn. My father left when I was 10. Unlike many other ministers that I looked up to, I didn't come from a high pedigree, nice family with my father and grandfather and great-grandfather preachers. My father left. Jesse was born out of wedlock. He taught me, his slogan was, I am somebody. It's not how you're born, it's where you go with it. So he made me believe even a kid on welfare in Brownsville, Brooklyn, could be somebody because of Jesse Jackson taught me that. Look what he did, born out of wedlock in Greenville, South Carolina. If he could do it, I could do it. It's easy for a preacher that's got PhD and his daddy was a big preacher and granddaddy. It's easy for him to do it. It wasn't easy for Jesse. And he taught me that it didn't have to be easy for me, but I can make it anyway.
Reverend Al Sharpton, founder and president of the National Action Network, at a news conference in New York City. Karen Tumulty, Washington Post chief political correspondent, has written an analysis piece in the Washington Post about Jesse Jackson's legacy and joins us now. Thank you for being with us. You write about covering his presidential campaign in 1988 when you were with the LA Times and how it wasn't necessarily easy for him. What do you remember?
Well, for a number of us young reporters at the time, it was a chance to see a whole lot of America and a lot of different sides of America. And I was recalling the day I think that stood out in my memory more than any other was right before the primary in West Virginia in May of 1988. And Reverend Jackson had spent the night at the home of a white supporter, an unemployed coal miner. And there was a hostile crowd outside that night and the next morning. And I recount how, people were hurling the N-word at him. And, it was really pretty shocking for me and for a number of us. But later that day, he was in an unusually reflective mood. And he said, yeah, that some people are very raw and very direct. But he said other people are able to use sand to cover up their mess. And he started talking about how he believed the forces within the establishment of his own party, the Democratic Party, were essentially using racist code, he thought, to stop him. Now, mind you, Jesse Jackson in 1988 he came in second in the Democratic primary. He got 7 million votes, not all of them from black areas. He won 7 state primaries and 4 caucuses. And, he believed that there were forces within his own party, within the structure and establishment of his own party, that were trying to stop him.
So many years later, as you're thinking about this, what is Jesse Jackson's legacy?
I think that he, for the first time with his candidacy, and again, he was a very complicated person. He was a much criticized person. But in Jesse Jackson's 2 runs for president, people could begin to believe that some things were possible. And today, for instance, President Obama put out a statement saying all of us stand on his shoulders. And Jackson's overall campaign message was a very optimistic, inclusive one. And I do think that he changed politics forever.
How? How did he change politics?
Like I said, he began to make people believe that a black candidate could be out there, a black candidate with the right message could be out there winning white votes. And the other thing was he went to places, he went to crack houses, he went to coal mines, he went to all kinds of parts of this country where presidential candidates didn't normally go. And he built a coalition that was incredibly inclusive, racially, gender politics, poor people, wealthy people. He put together, his Rainbow Coalition really was a very big tent.
We're talking with Karen Tumulty from the Washington Post. In context, though, as the most prominent black public figure between Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. and former President Barack Obama, will he be remembered on the same level as those two?
I think he will. No, he probably. I mean, Barack Obama holds a place in history as, the first and so far only black president. But I think that these victories are not sort of just events in and of themselves. I mean, they are built on progress, and it is a reminder that progress is possible.
And what about his later years, as after he was done with running political office? He went into the business of being a hostage negotiator. He was
all over the world. He was doing that. And, and there was a lot of criticism as well of the finances of the Rainbow Push Coalition. And, I do think, though, it was a special tragedy that when illness finally caught up with him, what it did was it silenced him. And by taking away his voice, it really did take away his greatest power.
Karen Tumulty, Washington Post chief political correspondent. You can find our articles at WashingtonPost.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
If you search the name Jesse Jackson at cspan.org, comes up 463 hits, starting in 1983 with his first run for president. And in that run, the 1984 presidential race, he came in third for the Democratic nomination. Then he ran again in 1988. He came in second. Here's his closing minute of a speech at the Democratic National Convention in 1988.
Every one of these funny labels they put on you, those of you who are watching this broadcast tonight in the projects, on the corners, I understand. Call you outcast, low down, you can't make it, you're nothing, you're from nobody, subclass, underclass. When you see Jesse Jackson, when my name goes in nomination, your name goes in nomination. I was born in the slum, but the slum was not born in me. And it wasn't born in you, and you can make it. Wherever you are tonight, you can make it. Hold your head high. Stick your chest out. You can make it. It gets dark sometimes, but the morning comes. Don't you surrender. Suffering breeds character, character breeds faith. In the end, faith will not disappoint. You must not surrender. You may or may not get there, but just know that you're qualified, and you hold on and hold out. We must never surrender. America will get better and better. Keep hope alive.
Reverend Jesse Jackson at the 1988 Democratic National Convention in Atlanta, Georgia. Jesse Jackson has passed away at the age of 84. His family putting out a statement. Our father was a servant leader, not only to our family, but to the oppressed, the voiceless, and the overlooked around the world. We shared him with the world, and in return, the world became part of our extended family. The National Constitution Center in Philadelphia today held a program titled Youth to 50-Hour Declaration. The center calls it a once-in-a-generation gathering of young adults shaping America's future, the founders of our next chapter, and 250 referring to the 250th anniversary of the United States in 2026. This panel included Ariel Geismar, co-chair of Design It For Us, Shania Bennett, Philadelphia Mayor's Office Youth Engagement Director, and Sophia Alvarez, Program Coordinator of the Japanese American National Museum.
From where you sit, what feels most fragile in our country today? Whether it's systems, it is institutions, what is kind of, as you're looking out there as a young person, something that's kind of giving you pause? Maybe you can start off with Ariel.
Sure. To me, there's a lot that feels fragile right now, but I think at the core of it is the hope that we can be better. I think that we are completely tied to what America is doing right now, as we should be. And I think that as we evaluate America's past and present, I feel this very fragile breaking of the belief that we can be better than what we are now. Of the belief that we can outgrow a past, fix injustices in our past, and push forward. I think that as we think about dreaming big, as we think about the future that we want of the next 250 years of America, the idea that things can be better is feeling fragile to me right now. And I think that's why the power of young people has been so incredible, and why we're all here and why you're all here, is because I think we have a new perspective. Like we inherited all of these issues. We're growing up in one of the most tumultuous times of our country, if not the. And we're saying it doesn't have to be this way. Like it actually doesn't have to be this hard. It doesn't have to be this difficult. We can actually address the things that we want to address and go forward. But I think as we continue, and for me, I feel like every single time I turn on the news, I feel the hope getting a little bit more fragile. And we'll talk about next steps later, but that to me is feeling scary.
Thank you. Shania, what about you?
I was going to touch on hope. I talk to my young people all the time, and I truly do think that there's a hope deficit amongst young people. We all have that feeling. But I also talk about the loss of joy. And I think with being young, the beauty of being a young person is like we just have this innate joy of being a young person that we all add to spaces, and get in the way of what feels fragile is just young people being able to enjoy the joy of their youth, and with everything that's going on. So that's what I feel like is most fragile, just young people being young and having joy and happiness, and not our joy and happiness being based on happenings of what's going on in our country.
100%. I always joke and say that I think that young people should not be required to do anything before they turn 18. Because I don't know about
right?
I don't know about the rest of y'all, but like how many of us today, whether it's because you want to get into college, you want to achieve your dreams, whatever it is, like so many of us, we give up our childhood in order to protect this bigger thing, our community, our country, the world, whatever it may be. And I think, Shania, what you said of like, what happened to being a kid? What happened to enjoying our youth? I think it's really, really important. But Sophia, what about you? What's feeling fragile for you right now?
I think in this moment, it's our trust in systems, specifically the democratic process. Right now, we're seeing a real decline in people's interest in showing up to the polls, getting educated, being civically active in their own communities, not only at a local and a state level, but at a federal level. And we need to realize that we are voting in people who are serving us, their constituents. And so being able to have that dialogue with our leaders is so critical, and knowing that our voice matters and our voice counts is so critical to young people, especially because this is the future that our leaders right now are shaping for us. And right now we are seeing so many policies, so many attacks on our systems right now that uphold and protect our world and our future. And it's disheartening, it's frightening, and I think what really needs to happen is a revitalization of people's interest in wanting to defend our country and wanting to protect what is our innate rights.
Sofia Alvarez, program coordinator with the Japanese American National Museum, on a panel with Shania Bennett from the Philadelphia Mayor's Office, Youth Engagement Director, and Ariel Geismar, co-chair of Design It For Us. The moderator, Alex Edgar, Youth 250 co-founder and Made by Us Youth Engagement Manager. This was the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia holding a program, Youth 250, Our Declaration. Associated Press writing that lawmakers and the White House offered no signs of compromise over the holiday weekend in their battle over oversight of federal immigration officers that has led to a pause in funding for the Department of Homeland Security. A partial government shutdown began Saturday after congressional Democrats and President Donald Trump's team failed to reach a deal on legislation to fund the department through September. Democrats are demanding changes to how immigration operations are conducted after the fatal shootings of U.S. citizens Alex Preddy and Renee Good by federal officers in Minneapolis last month. That was from AP. House and Senate are not in session this week, but leaders say that the members are on notice to return in 48 hours if a deal is reached to reopen the Homeland Security Department. Congresswoman Jennifer McClellan, Democrat from Virginia, was interviewed this morning on this subject on the Sirius XM radio show Mornings with host Zerlina Maxwell.
Talk a bit about why Democrats held together, stayed unified on DHS funding, and what are the sticking points that you were not able to come to an agreement on to avert the partial shutdown?
It is very clear that DHS and ICE and Border Patrol are out of control. The fact that you had 2 American citizens killed by DSS federal agents, the fact that you have ICE terrorizing our communities, there's a public safety crisis that they created. Over 30 people have died in their custody since Trump came to office. And the American people have seen that. Everybody who was snowed in and watched the murder of Alex Preddy, are like, enough is enough. And so we have a list of reforms that are very necessary, that are reasonable, that apply to every other law enforcement agency. No masks, show your ID, no warrantless arrests, comply with the Constitution, detain people in humane conditions, not in warehouses that are basically concentration camps. And some of, the White House is now engaged in negotiations, which shows they know they have a problem. But so far, they have not really been serious about these reforms that are popular with the American people, that apply to every other law enforcement agency, and really needs to rein in an out-of-control agency that looks more like a paramilitary force in our streets than something that's supposed to enforce immigration laws and protect our borders.
Congresswoman Jennifer McClellan, Democrat of Virginia, on the Zerlina Maxwell program on Sirius XM today. More from the AP article on the partial government shutdown. Unlike the record 43-day shutdown last fall, the closures are narrowly confined, affecting only agencies under the Homeland Security Department umbrella, including the Transportation Security Administration, U.S. Coast Guard, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and U.S. Customs and Border Protection. But the work of ICE and CBP will mostly continue unabated thanks to billions in funding from President Trump's 2025 tax and spending cut law. That was from AP. Congressman Keith Self, Republican of Texas, was on Fox Business Channel this morning talking about this.
Lawmakers in the House and Senate are on recess this week until next Monday. What is the plan when you're back in session?
Well, it's up to the Democrats. Look, they can't get out of their own way because this is not going to impact ICE, because ICE is going to continue to do their job because they've got several years' worth of funding from the One Big Beautiful Bill. It does impact the agencies that you discussed, which impact the American people. So the Democrat shutdown might hurt the American people. It's certainly not going to stop ICE operations.
But, I mean, isn't it ironic that President Trump back in 2019 was forced to delay a previous State of the Union address in 2019 because of a prior government shutdown? Is this all by design? And then you're funded until the end of September, right before the midterm elections. I mean, this is a joke.
Well, the Democrats see a political issue here. That's the only reason we have this shutdown. They see a political issue. They're trying to get the emphasis off of that good market that y'all just talked about on this program. So it's political with the Democrats. That's all. It's performative politics.
Congressman Keith Self, Republican from Texas, interviewed on the Fox Business Channel by Maria Bartiromo. President Donald Trump was asked about the partial government shutdown and next week's State of the Union address during a news conference on Air Force One Monday night as he flew back from Florida to Washington.
Will you give your State of the Union speech if we're still in a shutdown next week?
Well, I think I would. It wouldn't bother me. I would give it, yeah.
How are the negotiations going?
With what? Which one? We have a lot of negotiations.
No, with the government shutdown.
This is a Democrat shutdown. This has nothing to do with Republicans. This is a Democrat shutdown. They're upset that the crime numbers are so good. They're very unhappy that the crime numbers are so good. They're very unhappy that there's a movement for getting voter ID. They want voter ID. The population, 98%, want voter ID. They don't want voter ID because they want to cheat at elections.
President Donald Trump with reporters on Air Force One Monday night, and Politico reporting today the White House on Tuesday dismissed Democrats' latest offer in negotiations to fund the Department of Homeland Security, saying that, quote, the parties are still pretty far apart. A White House official granted anonymity to discuss ongoing negotiations said the administration remains interested in good faith conversations to end the Democrat shutdown before more Americans feel the impacts. But the administration also remains committed to carrying out the president's promise to enforce federal immigration law. Another article from Politico today, one of the Trump administration's most vocal defenders of its aggressive immigration crackdown is leaving as public opinion sours against the hardline approach, according to two DHS officials familiar with the move. Tricia McLaughlin, Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem's spokesperson, is expected to inform colleagues Tuesday about her plans, according to the officials. Washington Today continues in a moment.
Best ideas and best practices can be found anywhere.
Well, we have to listen so we can govern better.
Democracy depends on heavy doses of civility.
You can fight and still be friendly.
Bridging the divide in American politics.
You know, you may not agree with a Democrat on everything, but you can find areas where you do agree.
He's a pretty likable guy as well.
Chris Coons and I are actually friends. He votes wrong all the time, but we're actually friends.
The horrible secret that Scott and I have is that we actually respect each other.
We all don't hate each other.
You two actually kind of like each other. These are the kinds of secrets we'd like to expose.
It's nice to be with a member who knows what they're talking about.
You guys did agree to the civility, all right?
He owes my son $10 from a bet.
He is never paid. Fork it over.
That's fighting words right there.
Glad I'm not in charge of it.
I'm thrilled to be on the show with him.
They're not shows like this, right? Incentivizing that relationship.
Ceasefire, Friday nights on C-SPAN.
Fridays at 7 and 10 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. You can listen as well here on C-SPAN Radio and get it as a podcast, wherever you find your podcasts. Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and wherever you find your podcasts. Washington Post writing a second round of nuclear talks between Iran and the United States concluded in Geneva on Tuesday without any breakthrough, according to statements from Iran and Oman, which is mediating the talks, but both said some progress had been made. The meeting occurred against the backdrop of an expanded U.S. military presence in the Middle East as President Donald Trump threatens to attack Iran if a deal cannot be reached. Iranian officials have said a deal is possible, but caution the diplomacy may take time. Trump has said time is limited, but hasn't set an explicit deadline. That article from the Washington Post. Vice President J.D. Vance was asked about this in a Fox News interview today.
Well, I'm obviously not going to make any announcements today. I think the president has a lot of options. We do have a very powerful military. The president's shown a willingness to use it. He also has a remarkable diplomatic team. He's shown a willingness to use that, too. And so what the president has been very clear with the Iranians, and actually I just talked to Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner this morning about some of their negotiations, is the United States has certain red lines. Our primary interest here is we don't want Iran to get a nuclear weapon. We don't want nuclear proliferation. If Iran gets a nuclear weapon, there are a lot of other regimes, some friendly, some not so friendly, who would get nuclear weapons after them. That would be a disaster for the American people, because then you have these crazy regimes all over the world with the most dangerous weapons in the world, and that's one of the things the president has said he's going to prevent. Now, we would very much like, as the president has said, to resolve this through a conversation and a diplomatic negotiation, but the president has all options on the table. And, one thing about the negotiation I will say this morning is, in some ways it went well. They agreed to meet afterwards, but in other ways it was very clear that the president has set some red lines that the Iranians are not yet willing to actually acknowledge and work through. So we're going to keep on working it. But of course, the president reserves the ability to say when he thinks that diplomacy has reached its natural end. We hope we don't get to that point. But if we do, that'll be the president's call.
Vice President J.D. Vance on Fox News this afternoon. The U.S. delegation led by Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and the president's son-in-law Jared Kushner. President Trump previewed the talks Monday night on Air Force One.
What are you expecting from these Iran talks in Geneva tomorrow?
So I'll be involved in those talks indirectly, and they'll be very important. We'll see what can happen. It's been typically Iran's a very tough negotiator. They're good negotiators, or bad negotiators. I would say they're bad negotiators, because we could have had a deal instead of sending the B-2s in to knock out their nuclear potential. We had to send the B-2s. I hope they're going to be more reasonable. They want to make a deal.
Have you been told that a deal is next to impossible?
No, I think they want to make a deal. I don't think they want the consequences of not making a deal. They want to make a deal.
President Donald Trump speaking to reporters on Air Force One Monday night. Today, after the talks between the U.S. and Iranian delegations, the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi spoke at the United Nations Conference on Disarmament, which was also being held in the same city, Geneva.
Humanity continues to live under the shadow of more than 12,000 nuclear warheads, many of which remain deployed or on high alert, embedded in doctrines that contemplate their rapid use and, in some cases, their first use. The continued reliance on such arsenals reflects doctrines that perpetuate existential risks for all humanity and stand in direct contradiction with disarmament obligations under the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. Iran has consistently pursued a strategy aimed at the peaceful use of nuclear energy, while demonstrating readiness to address any concerns regarding the nature of its nuclear program and to ensure its exclusively peaceful character. It was on this basis that Iran entered into nuclear negotiations and has continued until very today. A review of the course of these negotiations speaks volumes. The Islamic Republic of Iran has consistently affirmed that it neither seeks to manufacture nor to acquire nuclear weapons, which have no place whatsoever in Iran's national security doctrine. This position is rooted in our defense policy and reinforced by clear religious boundaries prohibiting weapons of mass destruction.
The Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi at the United Nations Conference on Disarmament in Geneva, Switzerland. New York Post writing, Iran announced Tuesday that it had closed parts of the Strait of Hormuz for military drills after Ayatollah Ali Khamenei openly mocked President Trump while negotiators met in Geneva to discuss the regime's nuclear program. Iranian state media announced that Tehran's notorious Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps had fired live missiles towards the strait and would close it for several hours due to, quote, safety and maritime concerns. Approximately 20% of the world's seaborne oil trade moves through the strait, which connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman. Earlier, Khamenei threatened that Iran's forces would hit the powerful American naval presence in the region, quote, so hard it cannot get up. That reporting from the New York Post. And from Al Jazeera, Russian and Ukrainian officials have convened for a third round of United States brokered peace negotiations in Switzerland, days before the bloody Ukraine war hits its 4-year mark. After the first day of talks ended on Tuesday, Russian media quoted an unidentified source as saying the negotiations were tense, lasted 6 hours, and took place in different bilateral and trilateral settings. That was from Al Jazeera. This is C-SPAN Radio's Washington Today. Associated Press writing the Trump administration is throwing its support behind the prediction market operators Kalshi and Polymarket in a critical legal battle between the growing prediction market industry and states that wish to ban these platforms. Again, that was from Associated Press. The chair of the Commodities Futures Trading Commission posted a video.
CFTC Chairman Mike Selig here. Over the past year, American prediction markets have been hit with an onslaught of state-led litigation. In response, the CFTC has today filed a friend of the court brief to defend its exclusive jurisdiction over these derivative markets. Prediction markets aren't new. The CFTC has regulated these markets for over 2 decades. They provide useful functions for society by allowing everyday Americans to hedge commercial risks like increases in temperature and energy price spikes. They also serve as an important check on our news media and our information streams. Today, the CFTC is taking an important step to ensure that these markets have a place here in America and have the integrity and resilience and vibrancy that our derivatives markets deserve. To those who seek to challenge our authority in this space, let me be clear. We will see you in court.
Joining us now with more on the fight over prediction markets regulation is Nathan Bomey, Axios business reporter and author of their newsletter, Axios Closer. Thanks for being with us. First of all, what is a prediction market?
Well, a prediction market is a fairly new invention that essentially allows people to trade on what is called event contracts, which is basically a way of saying you can risk your money on the percentage chance that something is going to happen or not happen. Now, this could be anything from a weather event to a sports game to a political election. And you basically can, take the probability and put your money into it. So if it's 20% chance happening, you basically, you put $1 on that, and then it goes to, if it ends up happening, it means it goes to 100%. In this case, that would be 5 times the 20%. So it would be, you'd make 5 times your money, and that's how it works.
I think I know why some states have been trying to regulate the markets. They see them as gambling, and they don't want gambling in their states. But why is the federal government pushing back and asserting jurisdiction? What do you think's going on here?
Well, correct that this is definitely viewed by many folks as basically another version of sports gambling. And it is important to note that the vast majority of trading on prediction markets is sports. So although elections, for example, are part of it, and other news events like the capture of Nicolas Maduro a few months ago was something that was being traded on by the prediction markets. Sports are the big one. And so, I think that this is going to be a huge debate going forward. And the federal commission, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, called the CFTC, has stepped in and is asserting regulatory oversight of these markets because the state gaming commissions throughout the country are trying to do the same thing. And so there's a fight now between the states and Washington over who's going to oversee this.
Who is supporting each side?
Well, on the federal side, the CFTC is led by a new chair, Mike Selig, who is basically saying they're going to file amicus briefs, essentially, in any legal case in which a state government or state gaming commission has attempted to block the prediction markets from operating. So he's on one side. And also in Washington, it's very important to note that President Trump's son, Donald Trump Jr., is an investor or advisor in multiple prediction market companies, Kalshi and Polymarket. And so some have suggested that the president's family has a financial interest in the success of the prediction market. So there is that to note. On the state side, though, the state side, you've got the states who want the regulatory authority to block this from happening there. You got the casino industry, which does not want this as well. So you've got the casinos who are fighting the prediction markets as well. And then some of the sports books have embraced it and others have not embraced it. So it has really splintered the gambling industry and the political world as well.
We're talking with Nathan Bomey from Axios. How popular are these markets? How much business do they do?
We're talking about really significant increase in trading, as they call it now, on these platforms. The Super Bowl, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars was risked on the prediction markets on the Super Bowl. And that is just the beginning, I think, because as awareness grows that in states where sports betting has not been legalized, you can often still access these prediction markets to risk money on sports. I think that more and more people are going to be bypassing the traditional sports books and using these prediction markets instead. So it's a real threat to the sports books as well, companies like DraftKings and FanDuel, which is why you've seen both of them actually create their own prediction markets that operates in states where they're not currently operating. So this is a space that is very dynamic and is a big threat to all sorts of players.
I know you said that sports at the moment is the big player on these markets, but considering that these prediction markets do allow bets on other issues, in a sense they operate like polls, is there any concern that perhaps they could be used, manipulated in terms of media coverage?
I think that there is certainly a big concern that there could be manipulation going on here. So I'll give you an example. Just a couple months ago, when the Maduro capture happened, there was a suggestion by some that there was an insider somewhere who was able to capitalize on advanced knowledge of his capture, that this was going to happen, and made a massive trade on Polymarket and made a lot of money. And there have been other examples of insider trading where people have basically been able to leverage the information, arguably leverage the information that they've had to make money. And so that's one way that this is influenced. But another way that this could be influenced is if you have the power to influence the public narrative on a topic, that could actually then sway the market and in your favor, especially if you've already bet on that market. And there is some question as to whether that is illegal or not. Some are arguing it's not illegal, possibly because the regulatory structure hasn't caught up with the idea that this kind of thing happened. It's kind of like it's not. If you look at insider trading with stocks, that's clearly illegal. That's very, very obviously delineated in the law. Whether or not it's illegal to influence a prediction market may be a little bit less certain.
And a final question, what happens next and how do you think this ends?
Well, I think that the legal battle here is going to continue to escalate because there's so much money to be made. And I think that there's a very good chance that the legality of the prediction markets does end up before the U.S. Supreme Court, because this is a classic case that the Supreme Court might want to step in on because it involves a state and federal dispute. The states often asserting their authority here, and then the federal government saying it has authority. Now, the CFTC does historically have authority over derivatives markets. Do these qualify as traditional derivatives or not? I think is a question the courts may ultimately have to answer. And then the question will come, how will the Supreme Court rule on something like this? I think there's a lot of uncertainty there. Obviously, a Supreme Court that has historically been fairly pro-business and did open the door to legalize sports gambling in 2018. But will this strike them as something different, as maybe something that violates states' rights? I'm not sure.
Nathan Bomey, Axios business reporter, author of the newsletter Axios Closer. Find his articles at axios.com. Thank you very much.
Glad to do it. Thank you.
Utah Governor Spencer Cox, a Republican, posting these prediction markets you are breathlessly defending are gambling, pure and simple. They are destroying the lives of families and countless Americans, especially young men. They have no place in Utah. Senator Bernie Moreno, Republican of Ohio, writing on X, clear lines of delineation and clarity on regulations is essential for American-led innovation. Congress gave the CFTC the authority they needed. I applaud Chair Michael Seelig for his leadership in bringing about much-needed certainty to our innovators. Wall Street today, the Dow up 32, NASDAQ up 31, S&P up 7. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is accusing the Trump administration of orchestrating a cover-up over the files related to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Hillary Clinton and her husband, former President Bill Clinton, are scheduled to give depositions on the Epstein files at the end of this month before the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. Hillary Clinton was interviewed by BBC News in Munich, Germany, Monday while attending the Munich Security Conference.
They are accused and in both cases were convicted of horrific crimes against girls and women. That should be the focus. And we are more than happy to say what we know, which is very limited and totally unrelated to their behavior or their crimes. And we want to do it in public because let's make this transparent. The survivors deserve that. The public deserves that. But you know, the Republican member of Congress who is running this hearing or this investigation is trying to protect the president. So let's get to what's really at stake here.
Just on this hearing, and obviously I'm sure Donald Trump and his administration would reject your characterization of what's going on, and he's denied any wrongdoing.
How can they reject it? They can't answer questions, and the Attorney General was clearly unwilling to answer questions. She works for him. So let's be very clear here. According to what we now know, Mr. Trump, President Trump, is mentioned, some say, 1 million times in the files. People in his cabinet are mentioned. Do you think that figure's correct? That's what it says, you know, on the internet over and over again. Well, so let's find out what the truth is. That's why we want it to be transparent and in public.
On that, your upcoming appearance before the Oversight Committee, where are we with that? You want to appear in public versus closed-door deposition. Is it going ahead, and how? What is the format going to be?
We will show up, but we think it would be better to have it in public. Because what we want is for everybody to get to the facts about this. We have nothing to hide. We have called for the full release of these files repeatedly. We think sunlight is the best disinfectant. Get the files out. They are slow walking it. They are redacting the names of men who are in it. They are stonewalling legitimate requests from members of Congress. That has nothing to do with us. Something is going on. They know it. I know it.
Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton interviewed on BBC News on Monday. Over the holiday weekend, Attorney General Pam Bondi said in a letter to Congress the Justice Department has released what she described as all of the Jeffrey Epstein files, and she says the department has fulfilled its obligation under the Epstein Transparency Act. Associated Press writing that people leaned out of wrought iron balconies hollering the iconic phrase, "Throw me something, mister," as a massive Marty Gras parade rolled down New Orleans' historic St. Charles Avenue on Tuesday. Marty Gras, also known as Fat Tuesday, marks the climax and end of the week-long carnival season and a final chance for indulgence, feasting, and revelry before the Christian Lent period of sacrifice and reflection. That was from AP. The new mayor of New Orleans, Helena Moreno, a Democrat, led a parade on horseback.
Marty Gras! It is such an honor to be before you today at Gallier Hall leading Zulu. I can tell you that you have a wonderful day ahead of you. Zulu is ready to bring lots of coconuts. You ready? All right, y'all, let's have a wonderful, safe, memorable, and glorious Mardi Gras. Have a great day. Love you. Happy Mardi Gras, New Orleans.
New Orleans Mayor Helena Moreno, just in office this year at today's parade. Lunar New Year begins today as well. It's the year of the horse. An AP article explains the Lunar New Year is the most important annual holiday in China and some other East Asian nations and is celebrated outside the region too. Crowds descended on popular temples to burn incense and pray for happiness and success in the coming year. About a dozen members of the U.S. Congress, who are in the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, put up a video about foods they are looking forward to eating on this holiday, starting with the chair, Congresswoman Grace Meng of New York, then followed by House Member Ted Lieu of California, Senator Tammy Duckworth of Illinois, Congresswoman Marilyn Strickland of Washington, Senator Mazie Hirono of Hawaii, House Member Sri Tanadar of Michigan, Senator Andy Kim of New Jersey, and then House Members Derek Tran of California, Amy Barr of California, Jill Takuda of Hawaii, and Dave Min of California. Here's the video.
So Grace, what is your favorite thing to eat on Lunar New Year?
Dumplings, sui jiao with my Chinese side of the family, and mandu with my Korean side of the family.
My favorite dish for Lunar New Year are longevity noodles.
This Lunar New Year, I'm going to get to eat one of my favorite things. In Thai, it's called Pak Bung Phai Dang.
My favorite dish to celebrate the Lunar New Year is actually medicinal in nature, which is very common in Asian cooking. So it's yaksik, which is a sweet, sticky rice dessert from Korea.
If you're like me, you're going to celebrate that day by eating tons of Chinese food, noodles, gao, you name it. We should enjoy it.
I love chicken biryani.
My favorite dish to eat around Lunar New Year is dumplings, mandu in Korean.
Mantek, what that is a cylinder rice, sticky rice cake. You can have it savory with pork belly and mung bean, or you can have it the sweet version with banana.
You're not turned 60 this year, longevity noodles.
My favorite Lunar New Year food is, of course, the sweets. I love almond cookies. And I know these are just a few from my district, but you can bet I'm gonna go home. I've got my favorite recipe I'm gonna be making, as well as hitting our local Chinatown. Cannot wait.
My favorite food to eat on Lunar New Year is tteokguk, which is a Korean rice cake soup with seaweed, egg, maybe some proteins. And it is both delicious and supposed to be really good for your health.
Have a happy Lunar New Year.
Happy Lunar New Year.
Happy Lunar New Year.
Happy Lunar New Year.
Gong hei fat choi.
Chúc mừng năm mới.
Kung yi fat choi, everyone.
새해 복 많이 받으세요.
신년快乐.
Kung yi fat choi.
Happy New Year. 새해 복 많이 받으세요. 신년快乐.
Members of the U.S. Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus putting out that video at the start of the Lunar New Year. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Sign up for C-SPAN's evening newsletter word for word to get the latest in Washington emailed to you every day. Subscribe at cspan.org/connect. Have a good night.
C-SPAN's Washington Journal, our live forum inviting you to discuss the latest issues in government, politics, and public policy from Washington, D.C. to across the country. Coming up Wednesday morning, we'll talk about the 18,000-plus claims filed in federal court from immigrants challenging detention under the Trump administration with reporter Perla Treviso of the ProPublica Texas Tribune Investigative Unit. And Roger Zakheim, director of the Ronald Reagan Institute, will discuss foreign policy in the Trump administration, including talks between the U.S., Iran, and Ukraine, and the state of European relations. C-SPAN's Washington Journal. Join the conversation live at 7 Eastern Wednesday morning on C-SPAN, C-SPAN Now, our free mobile app, or online at cspan.org.